This is going to have to be the second half of the essay because I got interrupted there, and I'm very sorry. But okay, where was I? I was talking about Roddick's, and the people he's interested in are risk managers and risk assessors, often within a company. And the central premise, really, of that article, and this guy's a pretty important voice in risk assessment, is that listening to more voices than just the risk assessment community, and he mentions a number of research communities, might be a way to broaden the purview of research, and begin to really complexify the notions we have of risk communication. And in many ways, his emphasis on what we don't know is very important, a very important one, because in the area of science, and particularly in the area of risk, the effective risk communication, I think, comes from some way of understanding how to provide a degree of certainty when when you're surrounded by a high degree of uncertainty. And so Roddick's in that article is trying to bring in other voices, I think, to define risk, and to allow for a way to get beyond the kind of policy shortcuts. What he calls them is safety factors, and there's another term he used for them, risk factors, that are used to cut corners. And he's trying to make it a little more complex. And then Blythe, they are trying to mediate discussions among members of a community, and really to find out ways to bring the community into the discussion. And they're working with that group of researchers. The acronym is TOSC, and they're kind of helping them understand the community. So you've got agencies, you've got communities, you've got planners, you've got various kinds of voices that are coming together in that nexus of concerns over that canal that they're trying to dredge up and clean up in Michigan there. So who is in the discussion? I can guarantee you that there will always be agency, public, groups that I've worked together with. But as you see, these authors bring in various other voices. The other concern or question, I think, that you want to ask as you're reading through these readings is, where's the uncertainty? That is, where do the questions lie? For Fischbacher Smith, for example, the uncertainty is in the way in which dangerous chemicals can be brought, or pharmaceuticals can be brought onto the market, and before we even know that they're dangerous or they've been tested, the media takes up the issue of what's a satisfactory tolerance level, and so there you've got uncertainty just pushing at the gates of regulation, and saying, well, what should we do? And at the high policy level that Roddick's that Fischbacher Smith is talking about, there's it's kind of a need for policymakers, governmental policymakers, to have an idea of what they should base their policy decisions on. And so the concept of the shadows and shadowy kinds of things I think what he's trying to do is to bring other voices, the voices of from cultural elements into the discussion of what constitutes effective risk. Ropick, the questions lie outside of sciences. He says there are no simple answers. So here again, we're just confronted with uncertainty. In Roddick's, the area is in how you come up with suitable tolerance levels and dose levels when you have uncertainty from a limited area of research. And really his article is sort of geared toward what do we do in the face of uncertainty. As you get to know my approach, you'll see that Blythe is really much more central to my understanding of how we approach uncertainty, because the concept of rhetoric and the approach of rhetoricians is often to make arguments in the face of uncertainty and to try to find ways to move forward when you're confronted with that. That may not be that the tools that Blythe and Grable and those authors in the last article that we read, Stacy's and invention and those kinds of rhetorical categories are the only categories, but they certainly do have a way of identifying what the kinds of questions are in participatory action research and what they call critical action research, and how citizens make knowledge, and how the scientists make knowledge too. And so what they're trying to do is to work, as I say here in my notes at least, they're centered on ways of understanding the epistemological practices of citizen groups. So a second kind of way to make sense of these readings, other than looking at what voices are brought in by the authors, is to look at the kinds of questions that they ask and where they see the uncertainties, because here they're saying the uncertainties lies in how we understand how people understand things. So as you read through the works for this week, a productive focus would be to look at the communities and groups that each author examines, and secondly, to look at the kinds of questions that each one asks as the basis of research, and where do they find the uncertainty. So I hope that's useful to you, and if you have any questions or want to talk about this in the forum, please do, and I'll see you again in another overview for next week. Bye.